Welcome to the Kentucky Line. I'm Matt.
And I'm Clifton. And so this is episode number 6, coming to you after a decisive win by Kentucky, 94-78 over Oklahoma. Matt, it was a game I felt like Kentucky kind of had control the whole game, and kind of one of those games we were looking for from the Cats. And I was glad to just see personally them put a team away and never really let it get back where you were uncomfortable, where they were a threat. So what were some of your initial thoughts on the game?
I I thought this was a game of uh, kind of some unsung heroes
Yep.
per se. We Oweh did his thing, but I wanted to talk about some of the other performances that stood out. Um, I think it goes without saying, Brandon Garrison's game was probably the best of his career here at Kentucky,
Oh,
anyway.
not even close.
And he he played well against Oklahoma last year, and but he really did a lot of good things tonight, and that were hopefully he can build on that. Um, and continue to give us some more positive minutes as we go throughout the year. And of course, again, Colin Chandler, he he for the second game in a row really came out and was aggressive and shot the ball with confidence. And he seems to really be coming into his own a little bit.
Yeah. You said it. I mean, I think those two who normally are kind of role players, Chandler has kind of stepped up lately, but Garrison, there's been games where very few minutes and hit or miss how he's been playing, but he just came in tonight and you could tell immediately had really good effort, 20 points, 11 rebounds. 11 rebounds. But what I thought was even more impressive than that was the way he passed the ball. There are times when he's playing like he did last night, he looks like as good a passer as we have on this team. And I thought he really was an integral part in just keeping the offense flowing, and the ball never stuck in one person's hands too long, and he was a big part of that.
Yeah, he his passing has really gotten better. It seems like over the course of his career, a lot of times he'll get the ball, and I'm half the time hoping he doesn't pass it.
Yeah,
That he doesn't make one of those backdoor cut passes because it seems like there for quite often he'd be throwing it out of bounds or throwing it where somebody wasn't, and just what wasn't I didn't have a lot of confidence in him having the ball at the top of the key, but it seems like he is starting to let the game come to him a little bit more and not pressing. I think a lot of that was him, a little nervous, trying to press it, trying to force it, instead being a little more patient. And when you're a little more patient, you can kind of see that those cuts open up a little bit better, and I feel like he's really doing a better job at that.
yeah, and going after those two, I guess Garrison's probably obviously going to be the uh, kind of the focal point of this game, and we'll always probably remember that as the Brandon Garrison game. But I thought Yelovich was just fantastic, especially in the first half. Hit some big shots. I thought he played pretty decent defense, came away with 6 rebounds. And that's about what you can ask from him. He also had 3 assists of his own. And he's kind of an underrated passer on this team, too. And especially when you think back to when SEC play started. And I know there was a lot of stuff in the press about Nate Oates saying, that our big men were didn't pass the ball. I think to that point in the season, had 7 total assists combined through probably 15, 16 games. And that's really turned around when you look at what this team was able to do from the 4 and 5 spots tonight. Let's see, 9 combined assists just in this game, and that's getting none from Marino, who really, I thought he struggled the few minutes he was in there, but really you couldn't take Garrison out in the second half.
Yeah, exactly. Moreno, it just kind of wasn't his night. He didn't play horrible, just couldn't really get things going. But Garrison like you said, was playing so well. You can't take him out of the game. But I'm glad you mentioned Yelovich because he was the next person I was going to mention as well, which was, that's the kind of stuff we need from him. He can shoot the ball, and that stretch four position in Pope's offense is an integral part to what we kind of need. And he gives up a little bit on defense. He moves his feet pretty well on defense, but it's Oklahoma had a little bit of a mismatch with him. They'd give that kind of that smaller uh, player the ball, and he kind of worked him a few times. Had
Was
him
Tay
kind of go,
Davis, I believe.
yeah, he kind of had him going in circles a few times, and he just kind
Yeah.
of took him to the basket. But hey, we can we can live with with a couple defensive breakdowns if he can help us like he can offensively, and he holds his own on the defensive part most of the time. But again, that was just kind of a bad matchup, really, uh, for him to try to guard that guy a few times because he really couldn't do anything with him. But uh, overall, Yelovich gave us a lot of good minutes. And I also want to mention Jasper Johnson. He came
Yeah.
in and he played 17 minutes and had 5 points, but I thought he would handle the ball better tonight, uh, more under control. He made some good passes and did kind of what we've talked about in the past, the things that we need him to do because he can come in and he can make some big shots and he can create his own shot about any time he wants.
Yeah, and I thought his minutes that he had to play, uh, the minutes that he had to play in the second half, were quite a bit better than what we saw in the first. I thought in the first that was probably one of the only things that I had to say negative. Was I thought at times, not just him but the whole team, they made some kind of lazy passes that I thought allowed them to be deflected, or uh, one time it led to a turnover, and then one other just kind of broke up the flow of the offense. And so that's got to kind of get cleaned up. But overall, I thought it was just a tremendous effort. And one thing I did worry about, especially in the first half, um, was that the shooting was so lights out. Was what we were seeing was a little bit of fool's gold,
Uh
because I thought we really didn't particularly guard that well in the first half, and that allowed them to stay in. They did hit some big shots that were contested, but I even texted one at halftime. I was like, I don't know if we can keep this up. We're going to have to make some adjustments on defense, or this is one that could turn around. And I was pleased to see them do that in the second half. Uh, we still stayed, pretty hot for this team, but it wasn't that just lights out. It seemed like everything they threw up went in the second half. Even though we ended the game, shooting right at 50% from the field, 46% from three. But that's about as good as this team's ever going to do. There was times, a couple weeks ago, I wouldn't have been sure if they could have scored 94 points if they were in a gym by themselves.
well, exactly. And in the second half, we started getting more easy twos. Yeah, we still shot the
Yep.
ball. Still shot the ball pretty well from three, but we didn't make as many. Didn't shoot as many, but we were getting easier twos. We were getting the ball to the basket. Oweh uh, kind of was doing his thing. When he gets a full head of steam, I mean, you might as well. He's either he's getting a layup now. Sometimes he'll miss those layups, but he's been seems to be doing a much better at making those layups, and so he's either going to get a layup or get fouled, and that's I think what the offense seems to be doing better is opening driving lanes for our guys. It seems like we just didn't have those driving lanes when we struggled so much. But
Yep.
us being able to move the ball and reverse the ball like we're doing, getting the ball into the paint some and kicking it out, or even at the top of the key, just getting some motion, it seems to be opening up driving lanes, which this team desperately needs.
Exactly. And so, I think one of the reasons that you see those driving lanes have emerged is this team is just uh, a small step forward in shooting has made a huge difference. There were times I felt like we had no one that can consistently come in and make a shot, and now for the most part, almost every lineup they put on the court, 3 to 4 guys you have to guard beyond the perimeter. When Diabate's in with Marino, you really don't. But even Garrison, uh, he at least pulls a man out of the paint if he's beyond the 3-point line. And so the emergence of Yelovich, Chandler is, back to that early season form that we saw. Aberdeen's shots got consistently better. And last night, even Oweh, uh, he took some where he dribbled a lot, but he dribbled into makes last night. I don't know if you can depend on him shooting 3 for 4 every night off the dribble. And I remember one time he made a play, hit a shot, and then it kind of cut to Pope talking to him at a dead ball. He said, "Pass the ball." uh,
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of feeling himself, but overall, I think the team is just they've grown tremendously over the last few weeks, and it's just one I think that allows the fan base to just breathe a little easier.
Oh yeah. Well, uh, Oweh, I don't know if you've noticed this, but his shot actually, and I don't know if he shoots it better, but it looks a lot better when he's shooting off the dribble. It doesn't look like he has
The hitch.
when he comes up off the dribble into his shot. It actually looks almost like a pretty normal shot.
Yep.
When he catches it all, when he tries to catch it off the off the shoot off the pass, he uh, that shot is all kinds of wanky. Now he's
Yeah.
actually been shooting it pretty good,
Yeah.
even off the pass. But his shot seems to be much better. That kind of mid range shot that he's been taking lately. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's about money on that.
Yep.
I mean, I have a lot of confidence with him taking that shot now. Where at the beginning of the year, I didn't want him shooting anything but a layup.
Right. And one of the things I noticed last night, and like you said, off the dribble, the hitch is much less prominent. But when they were showing the little clip, it was toward the end of the game, and I think Tom Hart and Dane Bradshaw, they were talking about a conversation they had with Mark Pope, and while they were having that discussion, they were showing some clips of Oweh and that hitch, and it was off the catch. It was in pregame warmups,
Uh huh.
and what I noticed, the hitch really isn't part of the shot. It's like a dip, and he sticks his elbow out before he even gets in a shooting motion.
Right.
And it's really just a slow motion that changes the way everything looks. Um, but I don't know. That really wasn't there last year. Last year, I felt like it was almost like he was waiting and releasing on the way down, and that's where the hitch was coming from. And it's almost like a different kind of thing that's got in his head this year. But right now, it's working, and that's all that matters. Um, so anything concerns you had coming out of this game, even though they won by 16, it was comfortable the whole time. Outside of 1 point, they got it to 8, and Kentucky immediately got it back to double figures and just extended the lead. Was there anything that worried you last night?
Uh, this team, nothing really worried me other than things when we get into some bad habits that uh, there in the second half when we had the pretty good lead, and if Oklahoma made that little run where they hit about three threes in a row, cut it to 8, and I'm thinking to myself, let's what's going to happen here,
Yep.
and because what happens is it seems like we have that lead, and then on the offensive end we start getting into some of these earlier season habits where we're dribbling it around, not really moving the ball, and it end up taking a bad shot. It just seems like we get out of our offense sometimes when we have that lead, and that affects us on the defensive end. It seems like they end up getting all kinds of wide open shots on defense, and so that I guess that's the only thing part of the game where I got pretty frustrated because we just kind of fell back into that. But luckily we came out of it pretty quick. But I guess that's probably the only thing that worries me is this team not being able to close out. Uh,
I'll tell you the one thing for me, what you said, but also we struggle, and I'm not sure Pope seems determined to play it a little bit every game, but we struggle in our zone defense. We
mhm.
give up some open shots. I feel like um, it's really like the defensive pressure isn't there is when we play man to man, and also we really struggle rebounding out of the zone. And any team can do that. You have to be a really disciplined rebounding team to rebound well out of a zone because you don't have a man right there on you. You kind of have to find the closest man and box out. But I thought last night and then against Arkansas, I thought there were some times where that really was a weakness of this team.
Well, You said exactly the biggest issue with the zone is it affects your rebounding. A zone is as long as you're playing a zone against the right kind of team,
Yeah,
typically you can because you're kind of willing to give up some threes if you're going to play a zone,
yeah, that's true.
right? You're kind of willing to and because you're scouting and you're banking on that they're not going to make a bunch of threes if you're playing a zone typically. Now, and you're right, it seems like we do struggle on the zone because it's easy to get lazy in a zone.
Yeah,
And that seems to be I don't think it's that you're meaning to be lazy. I'm not saying they're lazy, but it's easy to sometimes get caught standing when you're
for
playing a
sure.
zone, and that definitely can be a concern.
Um, and one other thing I want to point out, and I guess it'd be a small, lesser concern. Even the last two games, I think, has been two of the best games we've played all year, and maybe outside of the second half against St. John's, the best this team has looked. Um, we've not, as good as our defense has been at times, I don't think we've done a great job of forcing turnovers. Ultimately, if you can contest enough shots and uh, a team just doesn't get super hot, you can live without that. But I think you probably would like to see uh, more than six turnovers forced in a game, and Arkansas maybe had less than that. It may have been a four turnover game for them. So that's just one of the things also that stood out to me.
Well, we don't turn the ball over a lot. Um, I think a lot of that is we're not a real high pressure type team. Although we have been playing better
Yeah.
uh, perimeter defense in these last few games, minus the Vandy game. But um, yeah, we that's definitely something that would be nice. Always when always getting out in the passing lanes, it seems like he's kind of the catalyst for uh, getting turnovers
Yeah.
for our team. But
I think Aberdeen's close a lot, but he's just hardly as effective as Oweh is at it. But outside of that, I really thought it was just a tremendous effort. A couple games ago, especially after Vanderbilt, we spent a lot of time discussing, how few assists this team had early on in conference play, and even when they were winning, there was a lot of games they just didn't pass the ball well. It was a lot of isolation. That wasn't the case last night. They had 30 made field goals and on 21 assists. So anytime on over 67%, nearly 70% of your field goals are off assist. That's just tremendous. And then that's not even accounting for the times, it was a good pass and somebody got fouled. That's one place, maybe as much as anything, this team has made some strides and it's paid off to make this team a dangerous team, at least, as we get to the back half of conference play.
well, I mean, we're listen. We've won 7 of 8 games in the SEC. Honestly, nobody thought this was going to be the case,
Right.
right? I mean, after going 0-2 to start, we've won 7 of 8, and we seem to be coaches and players seem to be figuring out how how this team needs to play because this is a different team than what was envisioned at the beginning of the year. Um, it's a different lineup. You don't have your point guard that we thought we were going to have. That was
Mhm.
really the kind of the engine of this offense, and it's taken a little bit of time, but we seem to be uh, kind of figuring things out. And there are some times where Pope will have some lineups in that make me scratch my head, but I feel like most of the lineups now, because our players seem to be understanding their role better.
Mhm.
Almost any lineup he puts out there, um, I feel like we're okay with. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Well, I think one last thing, kind of as we wind down this game, and it's just a thought I had, and that's um, we talked about the role players, and we've talked some about Oweh's game and how it's evolved, and he's got better as we went through the season. Do you think he's put himself in a position to where he may actually be the SEC Player of the Year?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
He's he is what's he averaging 20 a game, right
in
at it.
conference, he's over 20 a game, right under 21. And I think the first couple games, they're like, no way, this guy. And I think he was taking a lot of criticism in the non conference and even like the game against Alabama. Uh, I think you're like, this guy's supposed to be our leader. He's the preseason SEC Player of the Year, and he hadn't lived up to that. But ever since conference play has started, after those first couple games, he has been, I think, a leader on this team, but also just on the court, he's been tremendous.
He's just a different player than he was the beginning of the year and in the non-conference schedule. I
Yep,
think Oweh, if was probably if you asked around, was probably the biggest disappointment on this team the first month of the season.
without question.
I mean, it didn't seem like he was engaged in the game. Didn't seem like he was just his effort just
He was
didn't
unhappy.
seem.
Seemed like.
Yeah, yeah, it just didn't seem like he really wanted to be out there. And again, I don't know what the deal was with all that, but he is like a completely different player now, and he's the player that he's playing like the player that was the preseason uh, voted the preseason player of the year,
Yep.
and I think there's absolutely he's he's right in the hunt for player of the year in
Yeah,
the
I do too.
SEC.
And I think probably going into this week, a lot of people probably would have said maybe Darius Acuff. And even though he puts up a lot of points sometimes, I'm not so sure that you can give it to him over Oweh if Kentucky wins enough games. I think that's one thing. If one team has a substantial, uh, you know, amount more wins than the other, maybe that gives them an edge. And if Kentucky was to fall apart here, I think that would hurt him with because they do have a tough schedule. But if he can maintain the pace he's on, and also you have to consider he's guarding every team's best player on the perimeter, night in and night out, and so uh, I would have thought you probably could have got pretty good odds if you were betting on Oweh, after that Alabama game for SEC Player of the Year, because honestly, I thought there was no chance the way he played up to that point.
Oh well, it's he's been the difference. We almost kind of overlook how good he's been when we talk about some of these games because we want to talk about the other players that have kind of stepped up, but he's been that constant force that we've just had to have to even be in these games,
Right.
and he has definitely uh, taken a leadership role and really uh, just put this team on his back, and it seems to have rubbed off. Whatever's going on, everybody seems to be playing better. They seem to be playing more confident. They seem to be just like even Aberdeen in last night. Aberdeen is just he's letting the game kind of come to him. He's
Much more
not
patient.
really forcing the ball. He's taking open shots when he's got them, but he's really being much more patient and trying to facilitate the offense rather than him just being the offense. Sometimes just taking it and just going in and going rough shot. He is facilitating and just I mean, it just makes us better. It just makes us a better team. Um,
100%. And I would have thought, you know, when we were having the trouble, I think most people kind of pinpointed three people like who it seemed like were some of the problem was at least with their attitude, their body language was, Oweh, Aberdeen, and then Diabate. But they've all been completely different ever since the lineup is shortened. They've been different players. I don't know if it's just they said, well, we have to. There's nobody else that's going to bail us out. But whatever it is, it's worked because all three of those I think have had much better attitude. The effort's been consistent, and this team has really just turned it around. And quietly, I mean, it's not great, but as a team, they're shooting almost 35% from three. And I don't know if anybody would have suspected that. a month ago, as a team, we'd be shooting that percentage.
Well, we shot the ball so poorly earlier in the season
Hmm.
that I think we all were kind of skewed on, like, almost didn't think that we just I think we all just assumed, well, this is just a bad shooting team,
Yeah,
right? That seemed to be kind of the consensus. This team just can't shoot the ball. Although it seemed like preseason, on what we would hear out of practices and things like that. Oh, this team can light it up. You're right. This team can shoot it. Oh, they never miss. And so there was this big disconnect of between of the fans being like, "What's happening here?" And um, but I think these guys can. I think the truth of it is, I think these guys are pretty good shooters,
I do too.
and it's starting. They're starting to evolve uh, into that part of the game, and it's obviously it's been a huge part of these seven uh, out of eight wins that we've had.
Yeah, and I think the one change is more of those shots, and this can't go understated, are coming within the flow of the offense. None of these guys are such good shooters that they can just, "All right, I'm going to take my man and I'm going to score anytime I want to. I can get my shot any way I want to." But they're all significantly better if they just play within themselves, and take the shot as it comes to them, not force it. And that's what they've done much better the last couple of games. So, like we said, big win for Kentucky, kind of lets everybody breathe a little easier. But that sets up a big game this weekend against Tennessee. You kind of have that win down in Knoxville in your back pocket. One of those big comebacks where you were down big in the first half, turned it around in the second half, like they flipped that switch. And this is one I really hope the team has circled. I know there's going to be a lot of emotion going into it. There's going to be a lot of festivities with the 96 team, the alternate uniforms, the Denim's coming back. But I would love for this team to come out and just see consistent effort from the tip and to see, all right, what do we have? Because Tennessee's a team that's they're playing better. Nate Ament is playing so much better than he was playing when we played them. Um, and he's one guy that kind of the team's going to have to guard. We don't have anybody that's really going to be able to guard someone of his talent one on one. But I'm just interested to see what this Kentucky team does, how they respond, and what kind of fight they bring.
Well, like you were saying, Ament is playing like the lottery pick he was
Yes.
kind of projected to be. So we better be ready to throw the kitchen sink at him. And uh, but you're right. There's a lot going on with this game, with the festivities and things going on, and hopefully. But I think our team's going to be ready. The thing that we have to do in this game that I'm just really hoping that I'm hoping we can come out strong again from the beginning, and at least not get in a hole.
Yeah.
Just at least play to where it's competitive from the beginning and not let it get away from us. And I think that obviously starts with us being able to make some shots, and I think being at home is going to help that.
Yep.
I have a lot more confidence that we won't get in a big hole at home, um, and we're just going to have to guard. I think with Ament, here's the thing with him, and he is so long, he can just go up over anybody. And
Hmm.
if you've watched some of his last few games, I've just kind of watched a little bit of the highlights with him. I think he had, oh gosh, he had like 30 or something the other
Yeah.
night against somebody, and he just gets the ball. He's about 15 feet, and he just goes straight up and just shoots it right over his guy, like he's in practice.
Yeah. He's so
Uh,
long, like there's
and
nobody can consistently guard it.
and I feel like we're gonna have to, and this may not work, but I think I'd put Yelovich on him.
Yeah.
Yelovich is 6'10",
Yeah. At least has the length
and he's
to.
long,
Yep.
and he can move it. Ament is not going to just kill him with quickness,
No.
right? So I really believe that Yelovich. This is a game where Yelovich can maybe step up and really help us on defense, because the thing about Diabate is he's a good defender, but Ament will just shoot it right over him. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's not long enough.
I think that he'll would maybe struggle, but yeah, it's gonna be a tough one. Tennessee's playing good, and they obviously have a bad taste in their mouth after losing to us after being up 17. So it's gonna be a dogfight, and we better be ready.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, I guess a lot of the discussion really around this game, even more so maybe than the game itself, is going to be on these denim uniforms. I know just tonight, probably about an hour and a half ago, as we're recording this, they released the shoes for it's the Devin Bookers that are uh, inspired by the denim
I
of the
saw those,
'96
man.
team.
Those are sweet.
Yeah, they are very nice. I know
Those are sweet.
they're gonna have a drop on them later this week in Lexington, and uh, they don't match a whole lot, but I would still like to have some.
Oh man.
And I know they're going to release the Converse, but the Devin Booker ones especially, those are really nice. So when in let's go back in time to '96. I know it was polarizing to say the least. I remember as a kid when the denim came out, there were some people loved it, some people hated them.
Uh huh.
What did you think, just in the moment?
Well, I was 16 in 15 in the 95-96 season. I was 15, uh, and and honestly, I didn't really. What I do remember of the denim uniforms was that there were a lot of people that didn't seem to like them,
Yeah,
and I honestly was just like, I didn't really care.
yeah,
I was just kind of I just loved that team. That's what like in the was in the heart of my fandom.
yeah,
You know, I just love that team, and so I like the uniforms, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, these uniforms are awesome, or I don't like them. I
yeah,
just like whatever. But I do remember though there was some talk of some people didn't really like them, but that team was just so awesome that I don't
yeah.
think it really mattered.
As a kid, like I said, I was 8, and so that's when you're kind of first developing, really becoming a fan. I remember, I had earlier memories, like when my dad would come home from work in the mines, we'd stay up and we'd watch some recorded games. But I just remember as a little kid, you're just kind of cheering for Kentucky. But '96 team is the first team that I remember learning the players. And honestly, they could have probably wore pink, and I thought Ron Mercer walked on water, so I'd have liked it.
Mm,
But
yeah.
I think as we go back on it, it's looked more and more fondly. And um, I know they've released some stuff that's more white with kind of denim accents, and that's probably the jersey they're going to wear for at least this first game. At least that's all the talk online, and maybe the road ones, the road blue later. I'm hoping they release the ball shorts though later. I would love to have a pair of those.
Yeah,
And then
the road ones will be awesome,
yeah,
I think.
so yeah, that was just a great team. But overall, it's been a good couple weeks for the Cats, and I'm looking forward to these denim uniforms. I know they've been kind of hyped all year. Everybody's it's the 30th anniversary of the '96 team, who for my money is the greatest college basketball team of all time.
Oh man, they
I
were
think they
awesome.
had 11 players at some point spent some time in the NBA. And it was just phenomenal. You think of a guy that was one of the last guys coming off the bench who would redshirt the next year, and Jeff Shepherd, and the year after come out and be the '98 most outstanding player of the Final Four. There was just so much talent from top to bottom, and one that was just loaded with NBA talent. It was almost like a Cal team before a Cal team, and it makes you wonder really what Patino would have done if he'd have stayed. If that was kind of the pinnacle, what would that have looked like stretched out over 10 more seasons?
Yeah, oh man, I tell you, well, that team that 90 in '96, the '96 SEC tournament was in New Orleans, and I happened to be able to go to that,
Yeah,
and that was maybe one of the all time just one of my favorite one of my favorite memories as a Kentucky fan, even though we lost in the championship to Mississippi State.
Yep.
And, um, you know, that was it was still just like one of the best experiences ever. And but I don't think anybody had a doubt. Of course, everybody thought at that time that Patino lost it on purpose.
Yeah.
but that was the talk. Oh, he lost it on purpose. He didn't. But whatever he did, it didn't really matter because we just rolled through the NCAA tournament that year, and it was. But that team, yeah. So it's going to be real nostalgic Saturday when they uh, recognize them, and it's going to be. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, me too. It's just gonna be the best. Those are just some guys like when you're developing, like I said, the fandom. Uh, Ron Mercer and Derek Anderson, Antoine Walker, Walter McCarty, Tony Dale. All those guys had long NBA careers, and it's just amazing the talent that Patino was able to assemble there. You said there you went to the SEC tournament that year in New Orleans, and this may be a topic for one we do in the off season when there's less to talk about. But man, I miss the SEC tournament being in those big domes. I know
Oh,
Nashville's fun for people, but the fact that you could just have 50,000 people, there were so many of them that tickets were cheap in New
right.
Orleans or Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I remember as a kid, we went in '99 to Atlanta, and you could buy a whole book of tickets for $100. And just when you're looking at one of these huge arenas like the Georgia Dome or the Superdome, um, it was just so much fun. There was just so much blue, and so I wish that they would go back to it at some point. But it's been great. So, well, Matt, before we hop off of here and don't want to go too long, let's talk a little bit of high school action. I know you went to a big game tonight, maybe a little closer than some people thought it would be. Bell County and Corbin. I know Bell ended up pulling away and winning there at the end, but uh, what kind of stood out to you in that game? Was it anything particular?
Uh, yeah, it was kind of a sloppy game there, especially in the first half. It was Bell kind of took a pretty big lead in the first quarter, and then in the second quarter, it was just like uh, foul after foul after foul, and didn't seem like any team got into much of a rhythm. But Corbin actually led at the half, and then uh, but Bell came out and took the lead and never gave it back up. It was Bell. Uh, Corbin struggles at times to score, and Bell has they. I was pretty impressed with their ability to make some shots, especially in the second half. And I think that Bell kind of showed that they're definitely one of the top teams in the region, and should be interesting. I think Bell and North play on Valentine's Day,
Yeah, that's one
um,
I have circled. I'm going to
and
try to make a point to get to that one. They Bell had a big game just last night too. They ended up losing by 14 to Madison
I
Central, but
saw that.
Madison Central, they were there, so it's a long trip, and it was tied at halftime. And Madison Central, I believe, is number 5 in the state. So that was
Well,
a good
yeah,
game just to go up and be competitive, and kind of know where you're at as you head into postseason. And this one, like you said, on Valentine's Day, is just going to be a fantastic game.
Yeah, Bell. Well, Bell Madison Central was the number one team in the state last week.
Yeah,
They ended up and they had a loss. I think Woodford County beat them to knock them kind of out of that spot. But yeah, Madison Central is one of the top teams in the state, and Bell pretty much played them. Neck and neck till the end it
till the
seems.
end.
So yeah, I mean Bell's got a good team. If Bell is shooting the ball well, they've got four guys that all four of them can really shoot the ball,
Yeah,
and so if they're having one of those nights where they're shooting well, I don't know that there's a team in our region that can beat them if they're shooting the ball well. But I know North is hot too. I think North's won 9 in a row and seems to be playing uh, uh, kind of like what everybody expected them to be at the beginning of the year. So yeah, it should be interesting. There'll be some good games, and the district here and down here in the 50th district, Corbin South and Whitley. It could be tied when it's all said and done. Uh, So it's going to be whoever gets. They'll be really fighting it out for that 1 seed, because whoever gets that 2 and 3 seed, somebody's going to be going home and not going to the region. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I know Corbin Whitley's had some close games, and it makes you wonder if a night like tonight, where you can play Bell, who's one of the top two in the region. I think everybody would agree to that. But that you've played them close, had a lead at halftime. Is that something that Corbin can build upon as they get into the later part of their season? But 3 weeks from now, we'll be looking at the district tournaments, and so it's a fun time of the year, and we'll obviously be covering a little more high school sports as we get into the district and region. So, anything before we close out tonight, Matt?
No, I'm just looking forward to Saturday and see if the Cats can bring another one home.
All right. Well, that's another episode of the Kentucky Line. And so it's been good talking to everybody, and we'll see you next time. Go Cats.
Go Cats.